Today's episode of the Our Hen House podcast is being sponsored by our partner, A Well-Fed World. A Well-Fed World is a hunger relief and animal protection organization chipping away at two of the world's most immense, unnecessary, and unconscionable forms of suffering. The suffering of people hungry from lack of food, and the suffering of animals used and abused for food. Mending our unjust food system is a critical part of solving the world's most destructive and persistent problems. Fortunately, the plant-based foods that promote health and well-being are the same foods that conserve resources to better feed the world while reducing greenhouse gas emissions and protecting the environment. A well-fed world provides the means for change by empowering individuals, social justice organizations, and political decision-makers to embrace the benefits of plant-based foods and farming. Learn more at awfw.org.
Our hen house is a squawking house. Our hen house is their hen house. Our hen house, ooh, it's a funky fresh house. Our hen house is your hen house.
My name is Jasmine Singer, and I'd like to welcome my co-host, Marianne Sullivan.
Hello, Jazzercise. That's what my niece calls you, Jazzercise.
Yes, it is. And jazzercise is something that not only do I remember from those fluorescent 1980s that I grew up in. Do you remember jazzercise?
Well, I remember that it existed, but I found out as little about it as I possibly could.
No, I went. It was like Edison.
Not at all surprised.
Edison, New Jersey. I had the whole TM thing going on. It's a book reference to my book. And
You have to read the book to find out what it means.
she was very into it. So I too went to jazzercise at the local community center. I think I was the only kid in the class.
Oh, sweetheart.
I hated it.
It's just one fucking tragedy after another.
The opposite of tragedy is the weather these days, as spring has sprung and it is warm weather out finally, except for we have gone through a long stretch of time where it was gray and cloudy and very reminiscent of Portland and Seattle. I always said I could live out there, but by day, I don't know, 12 in a row of it, I was sort of like, just commit me.
I know the people out there are very, when you say you love it here when it's fall and it's sunny, and they say, well, it's tough. It's tough. You got to be tough, and you don't believe it until you're in it. But yeah, those folks are you have to put up your defenses against gloominess.
Yeah, I don't have any defenses against gloominess. I wrote that book.
A few other things.
Yeah, well, gloominess, I think, is front and center.
Is a good word.
Yeah.
I thought I came up with that one. Gloominess.
Yeah, it describes so much. But now that it's springy out and we're wearing not so heavy clothing, I have been in awe of your tattoos, of your crow sleeve. You have this beautiful sleeve. And, whenever I give a talk and I read the section about tattoos and how, the section of my book about how, for me, part of reclaiming my journey toward seeking personal authenticity and my relationship to my body was partially through getting tattoos. I walked through the first tattoo I ever got and how that was an important factor in my recognizing my body as my own and not a body for others to consume. There's a bunch of naysayers in the audience who are like, well, I'm too old for that. And I'm always like, well, Marianne got her first tattoo in her 60s and now she has a badass sleeve with crows on it. And it's been looking good. I've been enjoying looking at it. I think your crows were hibernating for the winter or something under your jackets and your sweaters, and here they are.
Yes, they are. People are always amazed to find out that one crow around my wrist is actually a whole murder of crows up my arm. I did not get tattoos out of a search for personal authenticity. I mainly got them because you talked me into them. As so much of my life has been, and another good thing that you talked me into.
You have goddamn agency.
I love my tattoos. You keep taking the mic away from me. If my voice fades, it's because Jasmine's taken the mic away from me. I love my tattoos and I love my crows. And I people always want the story of why crows. And my story is well, I just like crows, which isn't that entertaining a story. But I do. I love crows because they're so fucking smart. And I just like it. I like the way that they're smart too. There was that article about it might have been a book review in the Washington Post about Frans de Waal's new book about how smart animals are. And
are we smart enough to know how smart animals are, is what it's called.
Yeah, and he's arguing that they're really, really smart, which we already knew, Franz, and that they're much smarter than we thought, and we keep finding that out, and we should change our attitude. But one of the things he talks about is crows, and I don't know whether this was an experiment. So if it was, I apologize, but it might have just been with crows in general. They put out these bottles that a crow could put their head into, but they were tall, so they couldn't reach that far down, and there was some food in it. But they couldn't reach the food because the level of water, there was water in the jar, but not that much. So the level of water wasn't high enough so that they could actually reach the food that was floating on top. And they put a pile of rocks next to this, and the crows actually picked up the rocks, dropped it in the water so that the water rose until the water rose high enough so that they could get to the food. I mean, is that fucking smart or what?
Yeah, I wouldn't think of that.
I'm not sure I would have thought of that.
No. I wouldn't have thought of that at all.
We're just stupid primates. We're not smart like crows. And they can fly. I mean, talk about talented animals.
Let's eat them. Yeah. We always say that when we see like a beautiful animal in nature. We're always like, oh, look how pretty. Let's fry them and eat them.
Yeah, well, that's what actually a lot of people actually think. Like deer, it's the first thing they think of. Oh, let's kill them and eat them.
So weird. I had this moment this week where I was like, isn't it weird? People eat animals.
Every once in a while, I have that that second of how completely bizarre it is that people sit down with a knife and fork and cut into the body of a dead animal and put it in their mouth. Like, ew.
Total non sequitur, completely unrelated. I sometimes think that about putting on makeup, and I wear makeup every day. Like I wear eyeliner. I like really enjoy wearing eyeliner.
Yeah, I often think that about makeup, but I'm not that much of a makeup wearer.
Yeah,
I just wear, mine is more like remedial makeup. like my skin is ruddy, so I try to make it not so red. But you actually really love and are very artistic with makeup.
Mostly eyeliner, but yeah, and I just every now and then I think, isn't this the stupidest thing that I'm painting my face? Like it's just every now and then it occurs to me how silly it is.
You have a little lesbian in you trying to come out.
Little, please. I'm a big old dyke, but you're
not that big, honey.
Not that old either. But dyke. Mm-hmm. New York Times had an article this past week. Is your pet lonely and bored?
I thought this was a fascinating article, and that's why I wanted to talk about it. That it's kind of unbelievable. She's writing this article. It's like a column, and not a regular columnist, but she's written books about animals. Like, what was her name? Do you remember?
The author?
Yeah, Jessica Pierce. And she goes through the fact that she's had many, many pets, and she's always been enthusiastic pet owner, and pets have been growing in popularity until now there are as many pets in the United States as there are people. And then she goes through how the lives that pets lead are just completely inadequate. And she talks about goldfish, that her kid had goldfish in a bowl and now she feels awful about it. And hermit crabs, how they need an enormous amount of space and they're confined, and they need company and they're confined in these little spaces. But she's also talking, and reptiles and other animals of that ilk who really are given completely inadequate amounts of space. But then she's also talking about cats and dogs, particularly about dogs. And she's not talking about, she mentions how many are deprived, like seriously deprived and killed and treated cruelly and killed in shelters and all of that. She mentions that, but she makes the point that that's not what she's talking about. That she's talking about the beloved ones who, are living in our homes, who we take as good care of as we can, who have the run of our homes, who we buy all sorts of, toys for and great food, and we take good care of them, that still their lives are just not enough. That we really have to think about this. And I mean, she's not suggesting we should all get rid of our pets, but she is suggesting that we should stop buying them from breeders and pet stores so that there wouldn't be so many of them, and the numbers of abandoned ones would go down, and then we could really, really think more seriously about how happy are they? Like how much of a life do they really have? I mean, especially the ones who are left alone all day. But even the one, the article made me feel guilty about Rose, which I feel all the time, because I kind of have an awareness of the fact that her life is not big enough for her. But I don't make it. I could spend my whole day making her life bigger and doing things that she wants to do. And I should spend my whole day. That's kind of what they need. And I thought it was completely fascinating that this article was in the Times. You wouldn't even see this discussion amongst animal rights people most of the time. We talk about the animals who are being treated cruelly and horribly suffering, but this awareness, this depth of awareness of this putting ourselves into the minds of animals, I mean, where would it lead? I really wonder whether this woman has any consciousness about, pigs or chickens, or I'd be fascinated to know, because that's... If you're thinking this way about dogs, you've got to start thinking about other animals, right? I mean, there was one particular line I really loved, and that really made me, think more and more about Rose and obligations to her. We can too easily forget that although we have an entire world outside our home, we are everything to our animals. It is so easy to forget that. And especially when you have a dog like Rose, who just she doesn't bother you. If you don't want to bother her, if you don't want to play with her, she just goes off and she settles in the corner. She kind of doesn't take good enough care of herself. She doesn't nag enough. So everybody, turn the podcast off. Go play with your dog or cat or hermit crab.
Go play with ours. Play with Rose.
Rose would love that. Come on over.
Yeah, there's also some donkey action in the news recently.
I thought this article brought up a really similar issue. We've talked about this before, and this was something that was brought up by Donnie Moss, and it's about an incident that's going on at the Frieze Art Fair, and other people have spoken to me about it as well. And it's an exhibit there, and it's a donkey, and the donkey has hay and water and is in an empty room with... Well, it's not empty because there are people going to see the exhibit, but otherwise empty, with a chandelier. And, I don't know a lot about art. I don't understand why this is art, but that's not really what I'm here to talk about, because obviously people think this is art in some way. But I thought that it perfectly coordinated with that article, because this donkey is not being inhumanely treated in the way we normally think of that word. It's not being tortured. It's being fed. I shouldn't keep saying it. He or she is being fed. God, the gendered pronouns are just so annoying. They're taking care of the donkey, and, people are in and out, and so it's presumably not totally boring there. I don't know. And still, there's something just so deeply horrifying about it. And I think it's because it really crystallizes, it brings down to the basic issue of exploitation. We're not talking about mistreatment here, but a donkey is not art materials to be used to make somebody else's point. A donkey belongs to him or herself and should only be making his or her points to the world, whatever donkey points are to be made. And there's just something it's so interesting, I think, because compared to almost everything else we talk about, the mistreatment isn't there, but the exploitation is so obvious. And donkeys are just not art materials. They're just not.
Yeah, it reminds me very much of when we were at the Brooklyn Museum and we saw those pigeons on display for the sake of so-called art. And it was on a whole floor that was social justice oriented. And it was just so amazing how quickly we could just cast aside certain beings as something that's there for our pleasure or profit, or our thoughts, or something that benefits us, as opposed to considering the animal from his or her perspective.
Yeah, I mean, the pigeons are even a little worse because probably their welfare is a little bit more compromised. I don't know. I mean, not being a pigeon or a donkey, I'm not sure. But yeah, it really does. I actually love thinking about these issues because it really does bring it down to the basic issue that they're not here for us. They're here for themselves.
Yeah. Well, switching gears completely, one of my very favorite websites is autostraddle.com.
It's because you're a big old dyke.
It's just, it's like girl on girl culture, basically. I think that's what they call it. They say news, entertainment, opinion, community, and girl on girl culture. I just always enjoy their perspective. Well, not always. In the case of today, I definitely don't enjoy their perspective. So there was an article, I follow them on Facebook and I get the Facebook notifications when they post something. And there was an article called You Need Help, which is the name of a column that they have regularly. It's a write-in column for advice. What's a reasonable reason to dump someone? And I'm just going to go ahead and read this. You can feel free to interrupt me and grab the mic anytime you want.
I have permission to grab the mic. Everyone note that.
Is it reasonable to break up with someone / end a friendship because the other person is not vegan? By the way, I just want to pause for a second already and say, I had no idea when reading this that this was going to be about veganism. I was just reading it because I was like procrastinating and I always read everything that Autostraddle publishes. I've been broken up with and dumped by my best friend of 7 years because of my choice to continue eating animal products. I am respectful of their choice and have my own reasons for my diet. Am I completely unreasonable for being really fucking hurt? And here is the answer. And let's just take this piece by piece. Hello, friend. Firstly, I've written an entire You Need Help about cunnilingus, and this still might be the gayest question I've ever answered. And actually, you and I stopped and discussed that.
I'm confused as to why this is a gay question.
Well, because I think a lot of non-vegans, especially non-vegan lesbians, tend to think that, fall into the stereotype of that lesbians are vegan. And
I wish that stereotype were true, but it sure ain't.
No, it really isn't. And generally speaking, some of the most hostile non-vegans I've met have been lesbians. So I'm just saying, which isn't to say I know a fair share of lesbian vegans as well.
I know a fair share of hostile non-lesbian vegans.
Yeah.
There's a whole lot of categories here.
Yeah. I think you've won, friend. Regardless of what I say going forward, I think you've won.
Like the gayest question ever. Yeah. I when I read that, I totally didn't get it.
And we had to discuss that for 20 seconds before we realized what the author, who is Allie, was trying to say. Anyway.
Well, what we think she was trying to say, we might have gotten it wrong.
I did find it funny, though. That aside, even though I didn't agree with it, I did find that part funny. I just, as a vegan lesbian with a sense of humor, I actually appreciated that was what she thought. I thought it was kind of clever, even though it didn't land.
Right.
Yeah, I wish she was right, too. I'm sorry that you're hurting. It sucks to get dumped, regardless of the kind of relationship it is. And it sounds like you've gotten double whammied. You've been dumped by a best friend and a person you were dating.
At first, when I read it, I thought that they were the same person, but I think they were two people.
Yeah, me too. That took me a while.
Being a lesbian, it could be that she was dating her best friend.
or she was best friends with her former lover. Both of
go a whole bunch of different ways.
Both of which are very, very dykey. You've been dumped by a best friend and a person you were dating, and all for a very personal choice to continue eating animal products. I noticed you didn't say meat. You might even be a vegetarian, and this is all going down.
So I think that's one of the most interesting points. Why does she switch it to you might be a vegetarian, and that makes this even crazy? If she doesn't think that eating meat is a good reason to dump somebody, why would eating?
Yeah.
Why would that be worse? What's the difference between whether you're a meat eater or a vegetarian who eats cheese? There's just something there, and I'm not articulating it well.
I think I might have just figured something out. I'm totally guessing here, but I wonder if she knew the person who wrote the question.
Oh, and maybe she wrote it herself.
And knows that person is a vegetarian, and just kind of threw that in there and tried to be coy about it.
Otherwise, I don't get it.
Yeah.
So my personal opinion as to why it is that somewhere deep in the recesses of her brain, and we haven't read the whole article, but she actually does get it, even though she pretends she doesn't get it, that there's an issue here, that there's an ethical issue that might interfere with a relationship. And so she's saying that there's less of an ethical issue if you're a vegetarian.
There is a question in here, though, that deserves detaching from your particular scenario for further examination. What is a reasonable reason to dump someone? Friend, I'm not sure you're going to like this bit of what I have to say, but any reason is a reasonable reason to dump someone. I actually agree with that.
Yeah, no, she gets this right.
Yeah. When a person wants to not see another person anymore for any reason, that person has enough of a reason to dump. If there is something so important to that person that they will dump someone for it, well then, to paraphrase the great Taylor Swift, Dumper's going to dump. And I think that's very good advice.
Yeah, obviously, it's personal choice.
Right. That's personal choice.
Yeah.
The other side of the dumper's right to dump at will is the dumpee's right to be, as you say, really fucking hurt. Even if you perceived the reason for the end of the relationship as a valid reason, one that didn't sound silly at all, you would still have the right to be really fucking hurt. Of course you do. It's sorry, I added the of course you do.
Yeah, no, this part is good advice.
It's the feeling you're feeling. You should totally breathe into that feeling, accept that it's there and feel it. Furthermore, the dumper has the right to feel really negative feelings about it too. Everyone gets to be sad for a while when a relationship ends. It's sad. Endings often are.
All right, all that's good.
Yeah. So, that said.
And now we get into it.
This sounds like kind of a stupid reason to end a 7-year friendship. When you put all of that back in the context of getting dumped because you eat cheese or honey.
Again, she's changing it to vegetarian, like just on her own, because it doesn't sound as bad to her.
It sounds almost laughable with a question mark. And by the way, I think it's funny that she said honey, just because it's like, let's just go there.
Yeah, let's pick the most
fairly relatively benign, like most fringe, radical looking issue within veganism.
Within veganism.
Right.
Yeah.
See, I barely want to say it because everyone's allowed to have things that are really important to them.
Well, thank you, Allie.
I've dumped someone before because they don't read.
Does she mean that they don't like
they're
to
illiterate?
Read? They're illiterate. I don't know.
Because she could teach them how to read. It could be like a nice, charitable act. Were they 4? Maybe they don't learn how to read yet because they were a young child.
Well, I think it's totally appropriate that she dumped them.
Yeah, me too. Reading and writing are the cornerstones of my life, so it's really important to me that my friends and partner can engage with me in that space.
Like, how do you engage with somebody when they're... This is irrelevant.
No, you're wrong.
Or you talk about books and stuff.
Of course you do. I could see that being
it sounds like they're reading aloud to each other, which, being lesbians, they probably are.
Oh, wait. Flashback to Valentine's Day. I was in Berkeley. This past Valentine's Day, I was doing a talk. I'm telling you, I was doing a talk in Berkeley.
Oh, yeah. I was alone.
I was alone, too. Jesus.
Well, but I wasn't the one who left.
Okay, I'm moving on. I was in Berkeley doing a talk, and I went out with my friends, Andrea and Bobby, afterwards to a vegan coffee shop / bakery where
I stayed home alone.
Everyone there was lesbian. It was hilarious. Like at one point we wanted to take a photo of it. It wasn't even a lesbian hangout. Anyway, these 2 lesbians went up to me after we were just sitting there and they had been at my talk. It just so happens we were all at this coffee place sitting at different tables afterwards because it was like relatively nearby.
Where is this going?
Okay, it's going that these 2 lesbians on Valentine's Day, it was like 6 o'clock. They come up to me and they were like, we're leaving now because we're going to go home and our big date tonight is to read your book to each other out loud.
I rest my case.
I have never been happier in my life than that moment. I felt like...
I think it's a charming... this is not a criticism of lesbians or reading aloud. I think it's charming.
Well, I just want to say, like a big piece of tofu could have fallen from the sky and killed me at that moment, and I would have been happy. I would have died happy.
Well, that's nice. You would have been happy on a Valentine's Day that you were not spending with me.
You were... Like, do we really need to go there? You loathe Valentine's Day. Like, you were so glad I wasn't there. You were thrilled I wasn't there.
That's not true, but let's not get into that.
Okay. Anyway, where are we? Reading and writing are the cornerstones of my life. So yeah, blah, blah, blah. So it's really important to me that my friends and partner can engage with me in that space. But I'm sure to another person, a person for whom that's not true, that sounds really dumb. These people who only want to be around other vegans to connect with their friends in that space are allowed to want that.
Thank you. I mean, I'm not sure that that's what this person was saying, that they only wanted to be around other vegans or to connect with their friends in that space. They were saying they didn't want a relationship, an intimate relationship with a non-vegan.
They might not want to like consume bodily fluids that have animal products in them, for example, or they might want to feel as though their worldview of veganism is shared by the person who they love the most.
That one's a little bit more compelling.
Yeah, it's just a very safe space to be the bottom line for a lot of vegans.
Never talk to a non-vegan.
They just might, like at the end of the day, sometimes when you're vegan, you feel like you're a vegan living in a non-vegan world and you want your relationship and maybe your closest friendships to be reflective of that safe space, but it doesn't mean...
It's not even safe. It's like, it's loving. It's like...
Well, that's what I mean by safe.
Shared view, yeah.
These people who only, okay, I already said that. And I'm allowed to laugh at them a little, I suppose, and you are too. The same way I'm sure the person I dumped because they don't read is laughing at me. I have a sneaking suspicion, though, that veganism isn't really what came between you.
This is where it gets really annoying.
I say
Well,
this.
if it isn't annoying already.
I say this from experience. When the reason for the fight sounds silly, that's not the reason for the fight. It's the excuse for something much deeper.
Which she didn't say there was a fight, but does the reason for the fight sound silly to you?
I'm not sure it was a fight. It might have just been like a come to Jesus honest moment. Like, oh, you know what? It's really an important value for me to have a relationship with someone who is either vegan or vegan friendly and is interested in what I consider the very best part of myself. For me, it's the excuse for something much deeper, and the dumper doesn't want to deal with confrontation. Veganism might be the stand-in for other ways you've grown apart or valid critiques of the way you two are together. Actually, I agree with that.
You do?
Well, veganism might be the stand-in for other ways that they've grown apart.
But it probably isn't.
Right, but it could be, is my point.
Well, it could be, but it probably isn't. I mean, if a person said they were breaking, that's the reason they were breaking up. That's a really, really big reason and important reason for breaking up, so it's probably true.
When I was about 19, 18, I got my first. When I was 19, I got my second tattoo, right? When I was 19, I got my second tattoo, and I was dating a guy. Yes, a guy. And I had a tiny little tattoo, and we were in the process of discussing whether we should break up. And he said, I can't date you. You have a tattoo. I can't date a tattooed girl. And it was like the most ridiculous thing. But like, it's kind of the point that this writer, I think, is trying to make.
If it doesn't work for him, it doesn't work for him.
But if the dumper doesn't want to go there, they will pick veganism. It is easy to explain. In this case, you should take comfort in the fact that someone who's really bad at communicating with you has weeded themselves out of your life. That's a bit presumptuous, I think. Like
This whole thing is totally presumptuous. She's presuming that this wasn't the real reason, when it seems obvious to me that since it's a really good reason, it probably was the real reason.
Or that someone with whom you have nothing in common anymore has removed themselves, hopefully with as little drama as possible. But let's take the dumper at face value for a second.
Yeah, let's.
I was just going to say that. Let's say it is actually because you're not vegan. Well then, you are still well shot of this person. What does that mean? You are still
well rid of this person.
Oh, okay. Who wants to move through an entire 7-year friendship, carefully respecting someone else's very personal choices?
Very personal choices.
To only have that care, concern, and respect go entirely unreciprocated. No one. That's who.
Very personal choices.
Especially, very personal except for the animals who died.
Exactly.
Personal to them.
Third parties involved here. Rose is incensed.
Especially since diet is so personal.
So personal. Personal.
All sorts of things go into one's dietary choices or restrictions. Affordability of food in your neighborhood.
Oh, come on. We're really trotting out the food desert thing here. Is that really what's going on here?
Medical conditions, allergies.
Yeah, the medical conditions, that need for meat in your diet.
Ethics or lack thereof. I added the or lack thereof.
Yeah, what is she like? She puts in. It's the first mention there that there could be an ethical concern here. Is she suggesting that ethics go into the reason why this person who's writing to her eats meat? That this is an ethical need for her? And that it should be respected as an ethical need because she needs to eat meat in order to fulfill her ethics? What? Rose is incensed.
Even though there are many really great and smart reasons to be a vegan, it's not a viable option for everyone. Most vegans know that.
No, they don't.
So feel your very sad feelings on this one, but when you're ready to pick yourself up and keep walking, you may want to reframe this breakup.
I think you already have.
Because in either case, whether they were being honest with you or not, good riddance. You should feel no shame about prancing off into the sunset, free of what sounds like a really burdensome relationship.
It is burdensome to have relationships with people who remind you of what constitutes ethical behavior. It's really a burden. Yeah, I don't think we have to say anything more. This kind of says it all. Come on.
Well, actually, I do want to say one other thing. which is that I made the mistake of reading the comments a little bit on this one. And I just want to point out one comment that was on the Facebook page for the article, which was that a vegan responded. Well, of course, like 99.99% of the comments were like, right on, Allie. Let's
so right.
Yeah, personal. But someone on Facebook, a vegan, was like, I can actually understand why at the beginning of a relationship with the NRE, which is New Relationship Energy, this wouldn't be so much of an issue, but I can see how it would become an issue like as the NRE kind of like settles down a little bit. It was like a perfectly respectful comment. And I get it. Like, you know, you're horny. Sex does weird things to you sometimes. There's a hot person in front of you. Maybe they're not vegan. You start to question.
Created an entire scenario around these.
Yeah, you start to question whether or not it is that important. Maybe they have potential. Maybe you can live okay with a non-vegan, and maybe you can. I mean, whatever. But the point is, they were saying, but then, you know, I think eventually that would creep in. Someone responded and said, same is true, vice versa. I could see dating a vegan at the beginning, but then their self-righteousness and preachiness would probably take over a little bit too much, and it would become an issue.
Oh, so this is really in so many ways a rising anxiety, even though we have discussed it at this moment, and not in the proper category of rising anxieties, but anxieties are really rising out there. Like what you eat is a personal choice. What if you're eating toddlers?
Well, this person did say that she shared her life with someone who didn't read. So it's possible that you never know.
I don't get that. What?
Bad joke. Anyway, I guess I was making the point that, like, ethics, you know, you're saying, what if you're eating toddlers? That's an ethical dilemma. Or hopefully it's not a dilemma that you're not eating toddlers. And I was making the point that this person said that the author said that she shared her life with someone who didn't read, and we were like, maybe the person didn't learn how to read yet. Maybe they were a young child. And
all right, that was a bit of all right.
Yeah, you had to really move on from that. Moving on, okay. Anyway, so I'm just saying that ethics are ethics, and they're very important to people. And like, I don't, you know, rape little boys on Mondays after 6. I'm not like a non-rapist until 6. It's just, and yes, I went there. I think we should go into rising anxieties now. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think we're kind of already there. So let's transition. I mean, into rising anxieties, not like transition.
Rising anxieties. Rising anxieties.
Yes, it's true. Anxieties are rising. Our first story is from the Des Moines Register in Iowa. And this is a fascinating little story. Oh, actually, it's not a little story. I hadn't heard that this happened, but I found out after reading this story. And this had to do with a pork processing plant, which I believe is industry speak for a pig slaughterhouse, that Prestige Farms, a big North Carolina outfit, wanted to build in Iowa, in Mason City, Iowa. And it was rejected by the Mason City City Council. And they're pretty pissed off there at Prestige Farms. And Ron Prestige is saying that the reason for this was racism. And I'm wondering, well, why? What would racism have to do with it? Is this a black-owned business? Are they claiming that the city council didn't want them to be moving in there? But no. Apparently, Mr. Prestige knows a bit about racism. It says, being a Southerner, I'm used to the fact that people think that racism resides in the South. It was very apparent among some that racism is alive and well in Mason City and northern Iowa as well. So I'm thinking, what the hell? What's going on here? And it turns out that Mr. Prestige thinks that the reason that the people of Mason City, Iowa don't want a pork slaughterhouse, a pig slaughterhouse in their lovely city that would be killing 10,000 pigs a day. That would be a lovely addition. The only reason that they don't want that is because they hate immigrants. And they feel that this would bring immigrants to their town, and they don't want that. So that could be the only reason they're against it. And, you know, I'm just so proud of the people of Mason City who fought this fight. Of course, not for the reasons that is being claimed. It's just so outrageous. Like, can you think of any other reason you don't want thousands of pigs shipped to your town every day to have their throats slit? And well, you know what? It's so interesting too. One of the things that was talked about in opposing this plant was that the people. I mean, among the many environmental issues, I don't know whether animal welfare issues were brought up. They probably weren't, but I don't actually know that. But was that the wages paid by this plant would be so low? It seems to me the people from Mason City are sticking up for the potential employees of this nightmare a lot better than Prestige Farms. This is just outrageous, How dare they accuse the Iowa citizens for community improvement of racism because they don't want immigrants in their midst, when really what they don't want is a pig slaughterhouse. Unbelievable, these people. Unbelievable. Our next rising sign is kind of a strange one. I admit it. And it's the title of it's from Cincinnati.com, which is part of USA Today. It's the local column, I guess. And the name of and you've heard this many times before, but it just struck me when I was looking for articles, and this is really very good cause for anxiety, and one that most people, and hopefully all of you listening to this podcast, are not something that you worry about or have anxiety about. And the title of this article is "Meat, Poultry, and Seafood Require Separate Cutting Boards." And she's talking about how we'll be cooking meals outdoors, and that we have to be a lot more careful with our food. And cutting boards are absolutely necessary, but because you're dealing with meat, poultry, and seafood, you have to really, really be careful, whether it's wood or plastic. You have to follow careful sanitation practices. You have to prevent cross-contamination. Otherwise, you're going to lead to foodborne illness. You have to designate specific boards exclusively to cut raw meat, seafood, and poultry. Frequently sanitize. Use liquid chlorine bleach mixed with water to clean your cutting board. That sounds healthy. And otherwise, you're going to get illness-causing bacteria. Aren't you glad you're vegan? All right, our final rising anxiety was sent to us by our friend Drew DeShazo. And it's a great one. It's from Hordes Dairymen, which I guess is a dairy publication. And they are really, really upset over at Hordes. The title of this article it's an editorial, The 28th Amendment, Animal Rights. And apparently this happened, this is from an incident that happened as part of a tour at the National Constitution Center in Philadelphia. And people were allowed to make their proposals for what the next amendment to the Constitution should be. And among the suggestions were the following: treat animals nicely. All animals must be treated better. Ensure all animals are treated with respect. Create tougher penalties for animal cruelty. Nature must be protected by everyone and everything, no matter the cost. I love these people who put these things down. These would be great additions to the Constitution. And as you know, I'm sure other constitutions, I'm particularly thinking of, I know Germany, have protection for animals and or the environment in it's actually specifically for animals in the German Constitution, though it doesn't actually end up in the kind of protections we would like to see, but it is in there. And so this would be just great, but not according to Hordes. They're really totally horrified. And of course, they have to give the initial disclaimer. While all of us in farming circles concur that animals should be rightly cared for, Then we go on for the real comments. Most of us would also agree that animals don't have rights. However, some tourists, all consumers, mind you, believe animals have the same rights as those denied by the British monarchy in the late 1700s. I'm not sure that anybody was actually saying that we should give animals all the same rights that we fought for in the Revolution, but, whatever. It is unsettling that these people believe a 28th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution on animal rights should be given consideration. It's hilarious. And he goes on to say how important it is that they have to communicate better. Communicating better is really not working for you guys, because the more communication there is, the more people are finding out what's going on. And actually, I'm so excited that actually that many people made these suggestions to amend the Constitution. And it's because it's because communications about the industry are actually reaching people. But no, not only must we be constantly vigilant to ensure top-notch animal care, yeah, right, we also need to engage those among us who want to blur the rights of humans with those of animals. Okay, I'm totally entertained by this. And he goes on to say, well, the U.S. Constitution and similar documents around the world protect life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We must remind everyone that right is reserved for humans. That clearly was the intention of Benjamin Franklin, who was, I'm inserting here, by the way, a vegetarian, though definitely an off and on one. George Washington and Thomas Jefferson. Okay. That one was fun.
Okay, well, I do want to remind our listeners that our Hen House is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, so we hope that you will support our efforts to change the world for animals by going to ourhenhouse.org and becoming a flock member. And you could do that for a monthly donation of $15 a month or more, or a one-time donation of $150, which will make you a flock member for a year. Please support our efforts to change the world for animals and to give you consistent quality programming. This is our 7th year of producing the Our Hen House podcast. And last year, we also started the Teaching Jasmine How to Cook Vegan podcast, and that is now with Chef Laura Delhauer, as well as myself, and the Animal Law podcast, which is with you, Marianne Sullivan. And we have a lot of fun, so make sure you subscribe to those podcasts in your separate feed on iTunes or Stitcher or however you choose to listen to podcasts. And we really appreciate that. So we have 2 guests today, and we're going to start with Eric O'Gray. And I think you're going to be very moved by Eric's story, and it's going to give you the warm fuzzies, unlike our Rising Anxieties segment today.
Our first guest today is Eric O'Gray, and I bet once we start talking to him, you will remember seeing the video for yourself, the video that he's going to be talking about today, and we are going to also link to it on the blog entry that corresponds with today's podcast episode. But Eric O'Gray has totally changed his life around. You could say he has, in fact, saved his life, and it's thanks to a dog named Peety. Learn more at ericandpeety.com.
Welcome to our Hen House, Eric.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you.
Well, we're thrilled to have you, and you are now a star, having just appeared on the Rachel Ray Show. And now that you're on our Hen House, I mean, it's definitely clinched. But let's actually start at the beginning of your story. Tell us about what was going on in your life. I think it was back in 2010, which is really not that long ago.
Back in 2010, I was 51 years old. And to the best of my recollection, I'd never gone a single meal in my entire life without eating some form of meat or other animal product. And I was really sick and in poor condition all the time. I was 340 pounds. My cholesterol was between 300 and 400. I had type 2 diabetes and was taking insulin. And my doctor suggested that I purchase a cemetery plot because I would need one within 5 years. At the time I finally figured out everything and got it right, I was about a month away from bariatric surgery, which I'd scheduled and qualified for.
So had you tried dieting in the past? Had you ever tried to change your eating habits?
I had, and I tried every diet that had ever been commercially marketed in the United States. Atkins, South Beach, really everything. If you name it, I'd done it.
So what made you turn away from, you said you were planning on doing the surgery, and what made you decide to take one more stab at dieting when you'd had so many failures in the past?
I came home from a business trip where I was on an airline, and this showed in my video. I was on an airline and it took off. It was delayed in the taking off. It actually took off about 45 minutes late because they ran out of seatbelt extensions. When I got home, it'd been a fairly traumatic experience for me, and this guy next to me on the plane did some fat shaming. And so when I got home, I was done with it, and I just didn't know what else to do. But by coincidence, the very next morning, and this was 2010, the very next day, I saw former President Clinton, being interviewed by Wolf Blitzer on TV, talking about a plant-based diet, and he was talking about the China study. And, in looking at him, he looked better than I'd ever seen him, really, ever. His face was slimmed down. He didn't have the big saggy eyes. Everything about him looked good and healthy. And Wolf asked him about that. Why do you look so much better? You've lost weight. What have you done? And he talked about his plant-based diet. So immediately following that segment, I started Googling Clinton plant-based diet, and believe it or not, in 2010, nothing came up on Google. There were no hits on Clinton plant-based diet. If you Googled that now, there'd be hundreds of thousands of hits. So we've come a long way since 2010. So I couldn't find anything on Google, so I really started looking around, and I found a naturopathic doctor, Dr. Peety of Cupertino, California, who knew all about this and was a practicing vegan. And so I made arrangements to consult with her, and I did. And as part of that process, she got me on a schedule. She made me commit to a schedule of weekly visits and helped me learn what to eat, what not to eat, and really how to prepare food. At that point in my life, at 51, in addition to never having eaten a meal that didn't include meat before, I also really didn't know how to cook. I'd never really made my own food. I've always had it delivered to my door, so that was a big part of the problem, I think.
So as part of this process of seeing this doctor who, it just seems like she was sent to you, but you were also given the advice about getting a dog, is that right?
Yeah, so she recommended, in addition to all the nutrition counseling that we did, the first thing that she recommended was that I go out and adopt a dog from a shelter.
I love this doctor.
I know.
Why can't we all go to this doctor?
She's just so wonderful. She just fixed me up in every way, and she really caused me to see the world in a different way. So she told me that I needed to go adopt a dog, and we had some words about this because I'd never had a pet before. And I asked her if it was okay to adopt a cat. And she asked me if I'd ever walked a cat. And I said no, but I think I've seen it done on television. So she just looked at me rather sternly and indicated that I really needed to adopt a dog. And it was for a couple of different reasons. Part of her diagnosis, she follows the underlying cause theory that you don't just try to prescribe medicine or fix something that's on the surface. You try to find the underlying cause of the problem and fix that. And the underlying cause in the way that she saw it was that I'd become reclusive due to my weight and stopped going outside and stopped really trying to function as a member of society, and just that the larger I became, the more reclusive I became. So getting a dog would do two things for me. First, it would force me to get outside and walk the dog for half an hour each day, which is the definition of light to moderate exercise, and is required to make your metabolism work correctly so that you can actually lose weight and start to get back in shape. You got to start somewhere. And the second thing would be to really get me outside and get me to be more interactive with other people. And in doing so, it just helped the underlying cause of my obesity. So I followed her advice, and over a course of 10 months, and this was in weekly meetings, the miracle was I started losing, by following her nutrition advice and walking the dog as she suggested, I started losing 3 to 5 pounds a week consistently. And this was nothing like I'd ever experienced before on any diet that I'd ever been on. Normally on all the diets that I'd ever been on, Nutrisystems, everything else, I was able to lose about 40 pounds, and then I just plateaued and couldn't get any further. And then at some point, I just would decide on these diets because they're really not sustainable. They're not intended to be a permanent lifestyle or a permanent way of living. I would stop, I would backslide, and I would not only gain the weight that I had lost back, but maybe an additional 10%. So it was really a vicious circle.
Yeah, a circle that many of us have been on. Now, I want to hear more about the process of weight loss, but first, let's talk about the day you went to the shelter to find a dog. What happened that day? What was it like?
Well, I did a little bit of research because I was a big fan of Google, I think, as I mentioned. And I Googled, adopt a pet and animal shelter, and I came up with the Silicon Valley Humane Society, which was the nearest shelter, the closest shelter to me. I lived in San Jose at the time. So I got on their site and I looked at their dogs up for adoption. They had a pretty good selection. And in looking at all the dogs, what was running through my mind was, okay, let's get one that doesn't have any, I won't have any allergy issues with, and is really well behaved and fully trained and is small and is, doesn't bark and all these like features. So really what I had in mind was, I think, maybe an 8-pound golden retriever, something that doesn't exist. But the wonderful thing about Silicon Valley Humane Society is that they have a really unique and very developed placement process where you call and, they have a lot of dogs online that you can look at. But when you call, they'll qualify you and ask you a lot of questions and really try to place you with the best possible dog that they have available, which is what they did for me. So she asked, and I just told her that I wanted an obese middle-aged dog so that we would have something in common. And after a further conversation, Cassandra Cruz at the Humane Society Silicon Valley said, I have the perfect dog for you. And we made an appointment for me to go down the next day and see this dog. So when I got down there, I was taken into a meeting room, and she brought in Peety, whose name was Raider at the time. And Peety wasn't what I was expecting. He was really sad looking, and he was overweight, and he kept scratching himself because his skin itched and his fur was falling out, and he just wasn't really looking in that great a condition or that happy. His shoulders slumped. He looked down at the floor, and I recognized in him the same thing that he recognized in me, because when he looked at me, I could tell that he wasn't too thrilled with what he was looking at either. So from that commonality, I agreed that, well, I'm going to go home and think about this, and I did. So I agreed that I'd go home and think about this, and I went home and I thought about it. And all these things, Peety was a project, and, but so was I. And we probably truly did, of all the possible creature combinations, have more in common than anybody that I knew. So I went back the next day and I adopted him.
Wow. I just love how many heroes there are in this story that both your doctor, she could have said the exact same thing, giving you the exact same advice and told you to buy a dog, but she told you to adopt a dog. And
she did.
Then this woman at the Humane Society who really gave a lot of, they didn't just let you come in and pick a dog. They really gave you guidance and introduced you to this dog who and then you who thought about it and realized this was what you needed to do. And so tell us what happened when first of all, do you know what Peety's story was?
Yes, he'd been through shelters twice. First as a puppy, according to the paperwork that I read. He'd been in a shelter in the East Bay as a puppy and then had been adopted. And it's really a sad story, actually, because he was part of a family and the mother and father separated and got divorced. And then the mother got cancer and was living with the only other person in the house was a 13-year-old girl. So Peety was too powerful for the girl to handle and walk, so they really had no choice but to give him up for adoption. And that's, so this was not a situation where somebody decided they were going to move out of state and didn't want to take the dog with them. This was truly a situation of need where it was in Peety and the family's best interest for him to be put up for adoption. So that's what happened. And the paperwork was such that Peety had been attacked by a German Shepherd at a young age and was very kind of skittish towards older dogs. And this is part of their qualification process, which is so valuable in that they needed to screen Peety to be with a single person who lived by himself, who he could form like who he could bond with and form a tight bond with. And he probably wasn't appropriate at that time for small children because he was a little bit unpredictable. So they found the best person for Peety, and they found the best dog for me. And we went home, and at first, he wasn't very trusting. we kind of went home and looked at each other. He sat on one side of the room and I sat on the other. And he slept on the floor and I slept in the bed. But then on the third night, he jumped up on the bed and he never slept on the floor again after that. We became best friends.
It's really a great story. Describe some of the changes that occurred in your life. As you've talked a little bit about, you started getting out and taking walks and getting exercise. But talk a little bit about what was going on inside, like your relationship with him and your relationship to the world. Did it start to shift?
It did, extensively, in that this wasn't just about the weight loss and about becoming healthy again. As I said, I was reclusive, and I'd never really had a really deep connection with any person or animal before. I'd always kind of treated everybody at arm's length and had never really been in a very deep relationship with anybody before. And I mean, at the time, I hadn't been on a date in 15 years, just to be honest. So what Peety did was he and I formed a bond of unconditional love. His love for me was so great. He thought that I was the greatest person that he'd ever met. And he just expressed his appreciation to me constantly. And I knew that that's what he was doing. And because he showed me the meaning of unconditional love, I felt true unconditional love, I think, for the first time in my life, and really felt that same bond towards him. His role in life was to be responsible for me, I think. When we walked on the street, he would patrol the street and make sure that nothing bad could possibly happen to me. I mean, he would look for dangers, and we went out on scouting missions, and it was his role in life to keep me safe. Because he became responsible for me to that extent, I then understood and realized what responsibility really meant. And in every part of my life, true friendship, everything, he taught it to me. And so I became a far better person, and I decided that I wanted to become the person who Peety thought that I was. So he changed my life in every way, and at that point I decided, that I truly want to be the person who he thinks that I was, and I set out to do that.
I love the way you put all of that. I especially love that thought of, I don't know whether any of us could ever be the person that our dog thinks we are, but it's really, really good to try. I've had several dogs, and I love them all, and I think they all love me. But I had one who it really resonates with me, what you're saying, he just used to stare at me as if I was just the most wonderful thing to look at.
And I think that the best way for me to look at it is it's a matter of progress rather than perfection. I would never fully live up to his standards, but in thinking about it, what would Peety expect me to do under this circumstance? Is I can try to, as an aspirational way, to try to be the best person that I can be.
I love that. I love that so much. I mean, we really would be as good as we can be if we just try to live up to our dog's beliefs. I totally agree. So you've talked a little bit about how you changed. How did Peety change?
Well, he went from sullen, like me, a fairly sullen creature who was very distrustful and who was just had a sense of annoyance to him all the time. He became a very open and loving dog that people, and especially women, loved. We would walk around, and he would just really be a joy to people. And he became a very happy, proud dog, which is just completely unlike he was when I adopted him. So everything worked out really well for him also.
Yeah, that's really wonderful to see. And tell us a little bit about the running. You've talked about how you started to go for walks and how that helped you, but you really became an athlete.
Yes, and it's something I really enjoy. So it's really important for me to say that all the weight that I lost, because I get this all the time, people think that I lost my weight by running, and that's not the case at all. 100% of the weight that I lost was because of a whole food, plant-based diet, really following what is the equivalent of the McDougall starch solution plan. And then getting light to moderate exercise in the form of walking Peety for a half an hour twice a day. That's all that I did, was change to a whole food plant-based diet and walk my dog. And the weight just came off like it was magic.
I am really glad you clarified that, because I think it's so important for people to understand that it is the diet. The exercise is really, really good for you, but it's the diet that really matters.
You know, it's my opinion, and I think that Dr. Peety explained this to me also, that the diet is about 85% of it, but you have to do some exercise to make your metabolism work correctly. If you don't do any exercise, if you're purely sedentary, you're really not going to lose the weight either. But it's not like you can go out and eat in an unhealthy way and then try to exercise that off. That's not possible. It doesn't work like that. But by doing the diet, a whole food plant-based diet, with just a small amount of light to moderate exercise, just in the form of walking for half an hour twice a day, you'll achieve your ideal weight within a year. I mean, I lost all my weight within 10 months, over 140 pounds.
Wow.
It was incredible.
That's really incredible. That's very fast.
But the running thing worked so after I lost the weight and I was at the end of my time with Dr. Peety, she encouraged me. She said, you know, what you really need to do now is you need to find a group exercise that you don't hate.
Yeah, I've been looking for that one all my life.
Yeah, because who likes to exercise?
Well, loads of people seem to. I just don't happen to be among them.
I know. I think that people that start when they're younger do, but like midlife, it's very difficult to pick something up like that and enjoy it. But I'd always, I'd heard good things about running, and I'd always been kind of mystified with something I heard, in that with running, you hate it for the first couple of weeks, but if you force yourself to continue, you get to a point where like a light bulb flips on, and it's like you're catching yourself running, and suddenly you don't hate it anymore, and conversely, you want to keep going. So I wanted to see if that miracle could possibly happen. So what I did was I went out to a local track, and for the first time in my life, the first day I ran 2 miles, and that was the longest that I'd ever run in my life, was 2 miles. After that, the next day I went back and ran 3 miles. The next day I ran 4 miles on that track. And then after that, I realized, I probably need to go out on trails or streets or join a running group or something, because this track's going to get boring if I just continue to go longer distances around it. So I went on Meetup, and I found a couple local running groups, and I joined them, and, it was like instant friends at the same time. So not just the physical component, but also a social component, like seeing people and actually having fun times and going out and doing a run and feeling challenged, and then going out and having coffee or whatever afterwards. And that really worked for me. And it was something that I really enjoyed, and I still enjoy. So since then, I've run longer distances. And, I'm just really having the time of my life doing that. This year, I'm scheduled to run 6 full marathons.
Oh, my gosh. Wow.
Yeah, if you look at the bottom of my website, ericandpeety.com, I have my race schedule, and it lists out all my races. So this year I'm doing marathons between Anchorage and Honolulu.
That's amazing. I'm like,
and a lot of points up and down the West Coast, and then a lot of smaller runs also.
So people are probably wondering, it's a wonderful story. You adopted a dog and you lost weight on a plant-based diet, but these aren't that unusual. But somehow your story has become a huge, big, inspiring thing for so many people. And it's because of a video. And can you tell us a little bit about how that video, for those people who haven't seen it, how it came to be made, and then talk a little bit about what impact it's had?
Sure. So I had maintained contact with Humane Society of Silicon Valley, and they have some really cool people that work there that I've been friends with or become friendly with. And one of them, they have a writer who does their blog, and her name is Finnegan.
That was my dog's name, the one I was just talking about.
Oh, really?
His name was Finnegan.
Wow. Yeah, all Finnegans are cool, for sure. So with Finnegan, she writes like some really funny blog posts, and she did one that went viral and became famous, and it was called Eddie the Terrible. It was about a chihuahua, a special needs chihuahua that only a special person could love. And it went through a lot of the trials and tribulations of Eddie the Terrible and how he kind of destroyed stuff and was difficult to get along with, but it was in a really cute way. So I read that and I was just laughing so hysterically that I sent her my before and after pictures, and I said, here's my story. You should do something with this also. And she did. And that was really successful. So the next thing is she was contacted by the Oprah magazine to see if she had any, based upon, everybody knowing who she was and her blog posts, wanting to know if she had any stories about anybody who had been really helped out and whose life had been transformed by an animal. So she referred them to me, and my story appeared in the Oprah magazine this past Thanksgiving. So that was really nice and everything. So after that, because that had been so successful and so well received, and they got a lot of really good publicity for it, they decided to undertake a new project called the Mutual Rescue Project, where the issue is there's over 13,000 independent shelters, animal shelters, and welfare organizations in this country, and they're all funded on a shoestring. They're all doing bake sales and, doing whatever they got to do to try to help the animals on a local level. And in 2014, $358 billion were donated to charity in the U.S., but less than 1% of that amount was donated towards animal welfare organizations. So the disconnect here is that people don't see the value, and that 1%, interestingly, corresponds to the same population of vegans in the U.S. Now, I'm sure that there was some back and forth on that, but the issue is that a lot of people, omnivores, don't necessarily see the benefit of helping animals. But what they wanted to do is to try to break out of that and suggest that helping animals helps people. So they decided that they wanted to do a series of videos on the story of these people's lives were transformed because somebody donated, and these shelters were helped, and somebody donated, and then this that caused this animal to have this interaction with this person, and this person's life was transformed because of that interaction. So they wanted to do my story first because of the Oprah article, and so I agreed. They called me up, and I agreed to do it. So they sent out a film crew from Chicago. And these guys were amazing. They had all this professional film equipment. They had overhead drones, some pretty spectacular stuff. So we actually we did that film over 2 days, and I was just amazed to see how nicely it had been edited down into 6 minutes.
Yeah, it's a beautiful video.
It is.
What I think is so fascinating is how through the combination of drawing and live action, it just brings Peety to life.
It does. And I wish that I'd taken more pictures of him, but, it's kind of like it was just me and Peety, and I just really didn't take a whole lot of pictures of myself at the time, so that's what we had available.
Well, I feel like I got to know him just from that video, even though he was drawn in much of it. It's a really beautiful video. Tell us a little bit about the response.
The response was incredible. So this was released on Valentine's Day this year, February 14th. And it took off kind of slowly, but then it was posted on SFGate, and it just went viral. On the SFGate Facebook page right now, it's showing 34 million views.
Wow.
And then on top of that, if you look at my website, ericandpeety.com, I have all of the major known places where it has been posted, and not just like the video posted, but somebody like a reporter has called me and done like a little story or taken off and done something in association with a video. So there are just dozens and dozens and dozens of different articles that have appeared. Like it was in Adweek, Runner's World. It was on NPR. And the most interesting thing to me was while it was on NPR, was during one of the live Republican debates, and it was outpolling the Republican debates at NPR.
Thank God.
Peety beat Donald Trump. It was just amazing. So it's also been closed captioned and translated into, I don't know every language in the world, but dozens of different languages. Like it's been in the Thai language, it's been on Polish TV, it's been in Japan and China, Portuguese, Spanish. And I have all these links on my site for anybody interested that would want to see it in different languages. It's definitely on my site.
Oh, it's really extraordinary. And it is an extraordinary video. You really, it comes across, the story just comes across, like how much this dog saved your life and how much you saved his. The emotional impact of the video is substantial. I just want to return because I don't think I really asked you about it, but the veganism. I just want to come back to that. You started on a whole foods plant-based diet, for your health and for weight loss, but has it evolved into a moral issue?
It has, and I'm really glad that you brought this up because I do a lot of public speaking, and I talk about this a lot. A lot of people in the vegan community think that, not a lot. I don't want to put anybody down, but I get on a fairly regular basis that if you didn't start out as an animal rights vegan, that you're not really a vegan. And my response is this. Animals don't care why people aren't eating them and exploiting them. They just care that that's not happening. So in my case, as you pointed out, I started out for selfish, self-centered reasons of improving my health and my lot in life. But had I not done that, I would have never gotten to the next level. And the next level is when you understand and you realize that there's not really a difference between a dog and a pig. They're both creatures. They both have central nervous systems. They are both alert and conscious. And they're both like wonderful, loving animals that react towards you in the same way. And at that point, when I realized that, that's when I became, in addition to a vegan for health reasons, I also became one for animal welfare and animal rights reasons, for ethical reasons. So when somebody asks me what kind of vegan that I am now, trying to qualify whether in their view that I'm a real vegan or not, my response is that I'm all kinds of vegan. I am a vegan for personal health reasons, for ethical reasons, and also for environmental reasons, because they're all the same. And it doesn't really matter which one you are, as long as you don't eat animal products, you really are doing all three at the same time.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think that's a great answer. I just feel that there's a synergy amongst the fact that the best thing for you is the best thing for the animals, is the best thing for the planet, that has meaning in it, that all of those reasons matter. And no matter what direction you come from, I think it's great that people are coming from it from all directions and then finding the other reasons. It certainly makes it easier to think. I sometimes think that people can't hear what's happening to animals because they've got meat stuffed in their ears, so to speak. And
Absolutely.
When you get that meat out of your ears, you can start to hear what's going on. So I think it's...
And another conversation that I get involved in with people fairly frequently is, people that are really, really on the polar side of the ethical argument often... I don't mean to put anybody down, and I'm not trying to do that right now, but I think that when you're hardcore shaking your fist in somebody's face and screaming at them, they're less receptive to hearing your reasoning and your arguments than when they are attracted to you and they want to be like you. So in my case, I try to use the gentle approach. I try to really not... strongly, I don't tell anybody what to do. My approach and what works for me, and I think it works pretty well, is to get people to want to not look like me, to want to be more like me. And so I try to conduct my life where I'm thin and healthy looking. I try to be really nice and non-judgmental. I try to be really, really nice to everybody that I meet, whether they're somebody that's working in a cafeteria or a janitor or the CEO of a company. I don't treat anybody any differently. And once they see that you're a genuine, loving person and you're selfless, as Peety taught me to be selfless, rather than selfish, then they want to have conversations with you and they want to ask you, why are you like you are? And then you can explain to them. And then I think that causes a greater light to go off to them, where they're very open and receptive at that point to hearing more about how they could do the same things to achieve what you've achieved. There are so many, 2/3 of the people in our society are obese or overweight, but shaking your fist in front of them and telling them that they're evil because they eat meat is not going to cause them to stop eating meat. It's not going to cause them to become healthy. It's not really going to further the conversation. But getting them to want what you have, in my strong opinion, is the way to do this. And, since the video has come out, I think that I've received thousands of emails, and I've tried to answer each and every one of them, emails, Facebook, messages, everything. And, I have a standard response for people that want to know how they can achieve the results or do what I've done, because they've seen the video and their mind has become opened and they want what I have. They want to experience the things that I've experienced, and they see this as a possible solution versus this merry-go-round of dieting and failure that they've been on their entire life, as I have. So my 3 major pieces of advice are: first, on Netflix, watch Forks Over Knives, Plant Pure Nation, and Cowspiracy. If they watch those 3 documentaries, they'll have a complete understanding of the plant-based movement and why they want to participate in it. Second, for books, if you really want to know how to implement this and how to do it, get McDougall, The Starch Solution, and just follow that to the letter. And what that's going to do is that's going to help you understand how to get on a plant-based diet and why you don't want to use any added sugars or oils or processed foods, why you want to use whole foods. And also Dr. Michael Greger's How Not to Die. And that will give you the complete understanding of how animal products are poisoning us as a society and what happens to your body once you get off of them. And people that, I've spoken to, and I think that maybe, I don't know, I don't want to take credit for this, but I think I may have influenced 1,000 people this year, so far this year since the video has come out, to take those steps and watch those videos and purchase those books and take the next step in their life to become a vegan. And I know for a fact that that's a whole lot more than I could have done by shaking my fist in somebody's face and calling them evil and saying, you're a disgusting person because you're exploiting animals.
So I know that before the video was made, and since you made your transformation, you lost Peety, and I know you have a new dog in your life. Can you talk a little bit about him?
Yeah. So Jake, Peety died in March of 2015, and it was the hardest thing that I'd ever gone through in my life, and I'm still not over it because we had that strong a bond. So when he died, it was just stunningly difficult to do anything. I'd never been just so affected by anything in my life. But over the next few months, I ran into somebody, a receptionist in a doctor's office, who had a picture of a dog that looked very similar to Peety pinned up to her cubicle. And she told me that, her dog had died recently also, and that was her dog. And she just told me that something that really stuck with me and was unusual, in that she told me that, soon a new dog will be looking for you. And when he does, you'll know it and you'll know what to do. So I just thought about that, and really 3 months later it happened. I had just finished a race in Seattle, and as I came off the finish line, I just got an overpowering urge to drive down to Seattle Humane, which I did. And in going to the adoption pens, just 4 minutes earlier, Jake had been put into an adoption pen. His picture wasn't even on the wall. He wasn't on the internet yet. He had just cleared all of their procedures, and he was exactly what I was looking for. I was looking for a dog like a mid-sized to large dog who could run 10 miles a day and do various things. So I was looking for a really high-energy dog. And Jake was a Labrador Rhodesian mix, so he was perfect for running. And when I looked at him and he looked at me and he turned his head to the side, and it was like we both recognized each other. And his response to me was, well, open the door and let's go home. So half an hour later, he was in my car, and we've been best friends and running buddies since.
Oh, that's such a great story. And I'm so glad that you found him. And I know what you mean, that it doesn't mean you're over Peety, because you just never really get over it.
Right.
It just gets not quite as painful. But thank you so much for sharing all of these stories with us today. You really have a very, very inspiring story in so many different ways. And I'm so glad it's reached so many people through your wonderful video. And just remind people where it is that they can find you.
ericandpeety.com.
Okay. And I'm sure many people will be looking at that. Thanks so much for joining us today, Eric.
Thank you so much for having me and for the wonderful conversation. I really appreciate your time.
That was Eric O'Grey. And now let's get right into some news, shall we?
Our first story today concerns Hillary Clinton. It's a story from the Washington Post. Hillary Clinton wants you to know what she thinks about animals. And this is referring to the fact that Hillary had 31 issues listed on her official campaign website, and she just added another one, and that is protecting animals and wildlife. As this article concedes, the issues that she's posted there are not particularly groundbreaking. She calls for ending the slaughter of horses for human food. I'm not sure whether she includes export of horses for human food. Actual slaughter of horses for human food is at the moment suspended in the United States itself. Anyway, stronger regulation of puppy mills, rescue plans for zoo animals in cases of natural disaster, and fighting wildlife trafficking. These are all very issues with great mainstream acceptance. But as the article also points out, this didn't used to happen, even with issues of great mainstream acceptance. And I'll just quote here. But the inclusion of this particular topic is certainly a sign of the times. Americans' concern about, some might say obsession with, animals is growing, and politicians and corporations are increasingly taking notice. I mean, I wish I thought that I wish I believed that concern is as high as they seem to, and I certainly don't see any signs of obsession, but it's a sign that we're headed in the right direction anyway. Our second article is about a new journal. This appears on NPR. The title of the article, As Thinking on Animal Ethics Shifts, New Journal on Animal Feeling launches. And this is referring to a new scientific journal. It's called Animal Sentience, and one of the guys who's starting it up founded another journal called Behavioral and Brain Sciences, which, according to this article, has been seen to have really changed and brought enormous recognition to cognitive science. And now he's turning to the question of animal sentience, and it's another really important sign of the times. And surprisingly, according to this article, and according to the founder of this journal, that I'll just quote this. It isn't that there's been a sea change in theory itself, hard as it may be to believe. I think scientists are pretty divided, as they have always been, about whether animals are genuinely sentient, which seems completely ridiculous. Maybe that's right. I don't know. Like, scientists can be awfully stupid, can't they? And maybe there is really still a division. I thought that had largely been cast aside, other than scientists, say, who were employed by industry. But then he goes on to say, but the strength of the conviction on the part of many, not only that animals can think and feel, but that this is a fact of enormous moral, social, and political importance, has increased greatly. And if there has been no theoretical sea change, I think there has been an ethical one. The demand that animal lives matter, and that wherever one comes down on such questions as to whether fish feel pain or whether it is permissible to perform research on animals, the conviction that the interests of animals need to be taken seriously is now, I think, very much the norm. So interesting that comment that the growing awareness about animals and consciousness and sentience isn't coming from science, it's coming from people. And as we all know, people are, in this instance, right, at least the ones who are starting to wake up to animals like you guys. So that's exciting news. And finally, a very exciting article in the New York Times about, a huge article, like a really extensive article on, of all things, aquafaba. It's called Vegans Whip Up a Secret Weapon, Aquafaba. And I don't know whether you've tried aquafaba. I still haven't tried it. But it's of course, a meringue type of product made from chickpea water. I'm sure all of you know about it. And this article just goes into the whole story and has a number of very interesting facts. Well, first of all, they give credit to the discovery of aquafaba to one Goose Wolt, who's an Indiana software engineer who had recently become vegan, and he wanted to come up with a way to make vegan meringues for the family Seder. But the real credit apparently belongs to two French cooks who had made a video of themselves using the liquid from a can of chickpeas to make chocolate mousse. And his wife saw that, mentioned it to him, and he decided to try the technique rather than for chocolate mousse for meringues. And, of course, as we all know, it worked like a charm. And now there's a new Facebook group dedicated to open source experimentation called Vegan Meringue Hits and Misses, and apparently it has more than 44,000 members. I'm going to have to get on that one. And there are commercial products being developed. In particular, a mayonnaise called Fabonnaise is being developed that's going to be using aquafaba. And the article also points out that aquafaba is good. Here's the quote from the article, and this is the New York Times. Whatever the reason, aquafaba delivers. Dump a can of chickpea water into a mixer, and it froths instantly like bubbles in a bath and whips into stiff, glossy peaks. It retains a slightly beany aroma in the bowl, but that disappears when cooked. There is no residual flavor and few calories. Like, what, obviously, the New York Times think this is one powerful product. And here's the real kicker, that there's a lot of this stuff floating around, and right now it's all just going into the trash. Here, with the American market for hummus reaching $800 million annually, there is a lot of aquafaba floating around, or more precisely, down the drain. Many vegans, including Mr. Wolt, predict that it is only a matter of time before new commercial products hit the market. And the article goes on to say that could be a boon for vegans. But let's face it, who is this really a boon for? It's a boon for chickens. This stuff is going in the garbage right now. It's available for nothing. It's free. It's got to be cheaper, 1 million times cheaper to use this than it does to use eggs. And so that's really, really great news for not just vegans, but for chickens and for all the people who soon clearly are going to be eating products made with aquafaba rather than with egg whites. This is really, really powerful stuff.
Very excited about our second guest today, Cynthia von Buhler. You are going to want to hear what this woman has to say about this truly fascinating, mind-blowing new project. And of course, it's vegan.
Welcome to our hen house, Cynthia.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
I am very excited to have you on. You are clearly unique in the annals of vegan activism. It sounds like you're pretty just basically unique, period.
Thank you. I guess that's a compliment, right?
I think so. And I'm not actually sure this is a totally fair question because it seems like the answer is pretty complex. And the Illuminati Ball sounds like it's a kind of indescribable. But can you just start off by giving us a glimpse into what the Illuminati Ball is?
I think so. Okay. So the Illuminati Ball, in 1972, there was an Illuminati Ball held by the Rothschilds in France at their mansion. And they invited, it was a surrealist Illuminati Ball where everybody was wearing these crazy costumes. And everyone says that the Rothschilds are the Illuminati. They're so wealthy. And I think that it was sort of tongue-in-cheek, like they were making fun of the Illuminati or pretending to be the Illuminati. I'm not sure exactly, but this ball happened, and then many years later, these photos were leaked. And they're incredible, like the costumes they're wearing, and it's just, amazing. And, Salvador Dali was there, and Audrey Hepburn was there. It was just a really interesting party. And so I heard about this, and I thought it would be great to do an immersive play. I've been doing many immersive plays. So I wanted to do something based off that. But then I also really liked that they were wearing these animal masks, like the Helene, the Baroness, was wearing this stag head with tears, diamond tears. And that just sort of made me think about stag heads and deer heads and crying and the sadness of animals. So I decided to sort of merge a story about animals with this Illuminati ball.
And
now that's not public knowledge. That's, we are letting the vegan press know that it has something to do with animals, but the general public, it's very mysterious and enigmatic. So they sort of think it's they're candidates. They're applying online to be candidates for the Illuminati, and then we're accepting their applications, and then they pay a fee for tickets, and then we transport them in a limousine out of town to this to an estate for the ball.
Well, I rest my case that this is a little indescribable, but you've described it briefly very well. Now, I've been looking at your website, and among the experiences that are set forth for your guests are fire performances, opera, aerial acts, esoteric ritual ceremonies. So just kind of walk me through what it's like to be a guest at the ball.
Well, okay. So I actually coined the term immersive excursion. I've been doing immersive plays in Manhattan since 2011, and what that is when you attend this event or this play, everybody kind of has a part in it, and you walk through environments and you're experiencing it firsthand. And you don't really know who the actors are and who the guests are because people get really dressed up. So I coined the term immersive excursion, which is doing kind of the same thing, but it's travel for the curious. So you get out of town or you go somewhere. So it's like going into a different world. So what we're doing is people are meeting, 30 guests are meeting in Manhattan at a secret location. They're boarding a limousine bus and where they can't see outside the window, so they don't know where they're going. And then they're briefed on the bus, and then they're brought 1 hour out of Manhattan to this estate in the woods, and then they experience all these things. Basically, it's an initiation ceremony, and during it, there's morality tests, and they don't really know what they're getting into. There's also this dinner, this very decadent, many course dinner that's part of the night as well. And that's and the drinks, it's a big part of it.
Yeah, I want to get to the dinner in a minute, but before we do, I want to talk a little bit more about the theatrical experience. I mean, and it really, it's immersive, but there is a basic theatrical experience, and maybe not a story, but a theme, perhaps?
There is a story.
There is
a storyline throughout the whole night. The people who are coming to this don't know that until they come, what the story is about. Now, I can tell you that the story has something to do with animals, but the people who are coming, they do not know that, and they actually have to apply. So they have to online, when you go to our website, theilluminatiball.com, there's an application that you can fill out online, and we see those, and then we either accept people or we don't accept people, depending on their answers. And, some of the questions are, one of the questions, do you eat meat? Please explain.
So what are you looking for when you're asking these questions?
What I'm looking for is, honestly, that's not going to deter me. In fact, if somebody says they eat meat, that's sure, let's bring them on. Let's show them the show. That's not something that I'm having a problem with. Although it's hard to read when someone says, do you eat meat? And they say, yes, I love meat. I love eating animals. And then a couple of questions later, I say, do you like animals? And they say they love animals. And they go on about how much they love animals. And I feel like there's this disconnect. And we're trying to merge that disconnect with the show. So
that is fascinating. I mean, that's the fundamental disconnect, that it's so hard to understand. It is fascinating that is actually what you're looking for in many ways. Mm-hmm. Are there any other things that you're looking for in your guests?
Yeah. So I'm not, and then people will say, I'm a vegan and I love animals. And that makes me really happy. And it's good to have both. The show is really about compassion. My number one value is compassion. And I think that vegans tend to be compassionate people. Unless you're a vegan just for the health reasons. Sometimes I'll meet people and they'll say, "Oh, I'm a vegan just for the health reasons. I don't care about animals." And I bang my head against the wall. I don't know. I don't understand that, but there are people like that. But for the most part, I think that they're really compassionate. So it's really a good combination. More of the people who come to our show are the mainstream public. And luckily the press has been really good about the mainstream press has been really good about not revealing what we're doing. I was a little worried about that, but so far so good.
That is great.
And yeah.
I've read a couple of pieces.
We've had reviewers coming, and I was a little afraid that they were going to reveal it. But
of course,
we tell them at the show that they're not allowed. Like they feel the sword, and if we scare them a little if they reveal it.
My understanding is that they actually feel the sword literally.
Yes, they do. So when they come in, we go through a series of rituals, and I did my research, and we're actually using a lot of actual. There are leaked Illuminati videos and Mason videos, and I'm using some of the dialogue from that and some of the things that they do. The first course is eaten blindfolded, and then they do feel the swords while they're blindfolded, and they recite some things. And I'm also incorporating. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of the Georgia Guidestones, but there's this crazy monument in Georgia, and it's in the middle of a farmland, and some say it was put up by the Illuminati, and it's this big granite stones, and it's sort of like the American Stonehenge with 10 commandments on it, and they're really fascinating. And the 10th commandment is take care of nature, and I think that's really interesting. So I incorporated that into my story as well.
I should have asked this question.
Actually, I'm sorry, not take care of nature. Make room for nature. The last commandment is twice. It's make room for nature. Make room for nature. Yeah.
Fascinating.
And the commandments are really interesting, and some people are a little bit freaked out by it because it says maintain humanity under 5 million. And that means that we have to get rid of some people.
Yeah, we've gone a little above that goal.
Yeah, but I think that this was put up. It was put up during the Cold War, and I think it was put up in case there was, an apocalypse. Like if we had to start over again. That's what I think it was about. But in my storyline, I don't want to give away what my story is. But it is about animals.
No, I'm not asking you to do that. I wouldn't ask you to do. I mean, I want you to, but I wouldn't ask you to.
I don't want to give it away.
Of course,
it's just even if you know that this is a vegan meal and that it is about animals and that there's a message, there are a lot I really don't want to give away because it's a spoiler.
I can tell talking to you that there are a lot of surprises. That's clear. But I just want to go back. I should have asked this question right at the beginning. But can you say who the original Illuminati were, or were alleged to be, or?
Yeah.
You were
they
saying
say there's a lot of information out there about who's the Illuminati, and it's changed over the years. But originally, I can't remember his name. There was a guy who started the Illuminati a long time ago, and it was for good reasons. And and then that ended, and then they were saying it was the Rothschilds, and then they were saying there's like these lizard people from aliens from out of space, and then lately they're saying it's people like Obama or Beyonce, and it's really taken a grip on like the hip hop community, and it's really interesting because when I was doing this, I started advertising that we were doing the show, and I sent out a mailing, and through my mailing list, and I have quite a large mailing list, email list. And there's a rapper named Prodigy. He's from a band called Mobb Deep, and very influential rapper. And his manager was on my mailing list and contacted me and said that Prodigy wanted to be involved. So Prodigy is part of the show. He's really interested in the Illuminati, and he knows a lot about it. And so he comes and he performs at the show and does a rap song. And then we had him collaborate with our opera singer, Katie Cat. So Katie Cat and Prodigy do a song together.
Wow!
While our dancer dances to this, and she does. Our dancer is amazing. Her name's Felicia Lachat, and she does like this chair dance that it's amazing, like this Masonic chair dance. But yeah, so he's not at every show, but he's at many of the shows, and he wrote a song just for the show about what the show is about.
Mm-hmm. And those are the primary musical themes is Mob, the Prodigy and your opera singer?
Well, he only does one song. It's
Okay.
sort of a welcoming
And
song.
is there other music?
And yes, there's music. There's the opera singer sings throughout the night.
And is the
and
music
there's-
animal themed as well? Is it within the theme of the show?
In a subtle way.
Cool.
Yes. The opera singer does a version of I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings.
Oh my God. I
and
love
it's
that.
It's really beautiful. That's not opera, but it's a really beautiful song. Like the other song she does is opera. That song isn't opera, but it's a really beautiful song, and we have aerial happening during that. And there is also dancing. Like we have dancing to medieval music, and outside we dance in the moonlight outside. And some people dance naked outside in the moonlight, and there is nudity in the show. It's, I think a lot of vegan events dinners are, this is a chance where someone, if they really want to go out and be glamorous and decadent, they can have it. Because a lot of times you go to a vegan dinner and it's more kind of like homey and safe feeling, but it's not like exciting and thrilling and a little scary. So it's a chance where you can go out and get really dressed up and go to have a meal that's high end but vegan. Like I go out to a lot of high end meals with my husband because he's a real foodie, and it's impossible to get. Like it's always really bizarre meats, very meaty, with high end food. So we really wanted to create our chef Erin Orr. She has a blog, a food blog, bigfislittleidish.com. It's amazing.
Yeah, tell us about the menu. I really want to hear about the menu. Let's talk about that.
Sure. It's the menu there's I believe 8 or 9 courses, and it happens throughout the whole night. So the dinner happens in 3 acts, with breaking up and other things happen in between. But the food is fantastic, and it's all vegan, and it changes with the seasons because we started in the winter and now we're coming into spring, and all of the food is, sourced really, she really puts a lot of time into finding the ingredients and putting together an amazing meal.
So
and it's also part of the storyline. It's, because at the Illuminati is known for doing sacrifice, human sacrifices, like babies or whatever. This is all hearsay. We don't even know if this is true, but they say that they do sacrifices in their children and their baby. And this is kind of part of the story. The Pindar leader, which the Pindar leader is a word, an Illuminati word, and it means the penis king, actually. Pindar is like the pinnacle and the penis king. And we have Pig King is our Pindar leader. And that's the Baron Rothschild is the Pindar leader. And so, there's call for some sacrifice during the show. And some of the audience members want the sacrifice and others don't. So there's this morality test during the show, and it's really interesting who goes in which direction.
God, it sounds like just an unbelievable evening. I can't even quite process it. And one thing I've been looking at the pictures on your website, and it looks like visually, it just looks like nothing I've ever seen before, and very lush and opulent. Mm-hmm. And one thing that really stands out, and that has clearly got to have a lot to do with making the evening an experience that is not part of everyday reality, or the costumes and the masks.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about the masks and costumes?
Yes, of course. So our costumer is named Kathmandu. She's a burlesque performer, and she's in the show. She plays the Baroness, and she did a great job with the costumes. And I originally was going to, I'm an artist, and I make things. I'm a maker. And I was going to do the costumes myself, and I just didn't have time with writing the show and just putting the whole show together because it's a lot of work. So she kind of came on board and just sort of took control of it with direction from me, and I think she really killed it. Like the costumes are beautiful. Everybody who comes to the ball gets a unique handmade mask to wear during it, and they were inspired by the original 1972 Rothschild Illuminati Ball. So they look a little bit like that. We're, inspired, but a little bit different. But all of our masks are animal related. And so when you choose to buy let's say you get accepted when you apply, and then I write back to you and say you've been accepted or you haven't been accepted. And if you've been accepted, you can buy your tickets. And then when you buy your tickets, you get to choose a kinship, an animal kinship. And the kinships are a cow, pig, monkey, mouse, and chicken. So you have to choose one, and then we have a kinship leader, and then your mask somehow in a surreal way relates to that animal.
But the masks are cruelty-free, is that right?
Yes. We use like special glue and things like that. And the feathers, there are some feathers on them, but we use things that were vintage. So, I don't know where in the past where they came from, but at least we were using vintage materials, or at least that's what the customer told me she was using. I think she's been doing burlesque for a long time. So I think she sort of used some of the things she had around. And I gave her a lot of supplies that I had around too for years.
I know this is a very, very pricey event. I think each of the tickets is $450. Is that right?
Yes.
So, and some, as you said, you're not sharing.
And I'm not making a profit.
Oh, that's okay. You can charge whatever. I have no objection to it. As long as you're getting, a crowd.
Event.
But I'm
the
just
reason why.
Kind of curious
about.
Do you
want me to explain why it's expensive?
Well,
or no?
Sure, if you want to. But I wasn't objecting to it. But sure, if you want to.
Yeah. Well, let me just explain why. It's it's the reason why it's $450 because we really have to we have to pay for the limousine bus, and then so you get the limousine ride to and from, and the bus it waits for you. We have entertainment on it. You also have champagne and a snack while you're on it. Then you have this whole elaborate meal. And then we have this amazing mixologist, Bootleg Greg, who, makes all of these drinks. All of this is included in the whole night. So it's all inclusive. You've got the dinner, you've got all the drinks you can possibly drink. We have cigars, we have everything is included, and everything is very high end. So, and all of the actors are paid. So it's, by the end of the night, we're not really making a profit. We're kind of just trying to break even.
That's fine. But I wouldn't mind if you were making a profit. I have no objection to that. And I'd be thrilled.
It's hard when you only have 30 people.
Yes, of course. It's a small
number.
crowd. But the thing I was really thinking about is that when I was asking that is so people put a fair amount invested into this evening, and some of them aren't vegan and they don't know it's going to be a vegan meal. Are they? Do you get people who are upset by that? Do they feel cheated?
That's a really interesting question. And most of the time, no. Most of the people I've actually been I actually sit at the dinner whenever I can. And I'm a guest at the party as well. It's my house. It's my estate. But but I am not in the show. I'm kind of part of it. I'm watching it as a guest, and I wander with the guests, and I have the dinner with the guests. And so I talk to them, and I feel them out about it. And my husband sits at the other long table. There's 2 long tables, and he does the same thing at that other table. And what most of the people say, they think it's vegan. They're not sure during the dinner, but some of the storyline is kind of about that. And so there's a little question: is this vegan? And then they'll say things like, "Wow, I never knew vegan food could taste so good."
That's great.
Or I've actually had people say, I eat meat every single day, and if vegan food tasted this good, I would be vegan. And I've had people say, if I had known that this was a vegan event, I never would have come. Never. And then even on the application, some people all say, are you vegan? That's one of the questions. Are you vegan or vegetarian? And it's no, like capital letters no with an exclamation point, which I find very upsetting. But, those are the kind of people who should come, right?
Of course.
So, but you get some pretty sarcastic comments. And I'm sure as you being a vegan, you've had people make jokes about vegans and not understanding vegans.
Heard them all.
It's really annoying. So, and we put up with it, whatever. And then you also have people who are sort of radical vegans who also put down people who eat meat. And I also think sometimes that can go a little bit too far in the other direction too, because we need to be inclusive. And everybody, many of us we weren't born vegan. Our parents fed us meat. And it takes time to get away from that addiction or, we were raised on it, and we knew it was wrong when we were little, but then you're eating it, and then you have to kind of get away and realize that there's a disconnect. And once you realize that, but everybody takes their own, they come at it at a different time in their life. Hopefully someday everybody will come around to this, but they don't. And, we just have to but if you start giving people a hard time about not being vegan, I think that can turn them off even more. And I think just showing as an example, about how vegan food is delicious and how being open-minded, I have a lot of followers on Facebook, and most people are not vegan. And some of them are, and then they get in fights with each other. And I always try to be the voice of reason between the two of them, sort of trying to be educational, but not, finger pointing. Do you understand?
I totally understand, and it sounds like you've carved out a really perfect role for yourself. So is all of the feedback you get positive, or do you ever get anybody who's really upset?
Yeah, we had a couple people in the beginning, and it was really bad. We altered the show a little bit to sort of temper it, because we have one person in the show who sort of eggs people on. He's a plant, and he was going a little bit too far, and this one guy got really mad at me and came up to me and said, they wanted the meat. Where's the meat? You promised me meat. Where is it? I want the sacrifice. And I said, I never promised you meat. And, and then he's like, I'm going to go to the New York Times and tell them that this is propaganda. And, I have a couple people who would say that, we had to change a little bit of the dialogue. We have to be really careful that we don't come off as preachy.
It's the challenge we all face every day. And it is a very difficult one, because people get their backs up very easily. They get very defensive instead of being open-hearted. I'm so glad to hear that most of the people do approach it in an open-hearted way. I think that's really great to hear. But it's inevitable that some won't.
Yeah, and I'm also being, the website in the very beginning was a little bit more mysterious. I put an FAQ in. I want to make sure people know that this is an immersive play and that they're not really being candidates for the Illuminati. That was in the beginning we thought, that would be funny if people come and they really think that, but it's not funny. It's, I don't want to prey on anyone and have them think that they're getting something they're not getting.
Sure.
So I just wanted it to be clear. So, with an immersive show, you try it and then you have some problems and then you have to fix the problems. So we've done that. And also in the beginning, we didn't have the application. I think the application really helps too. One of the things I do look for in the application is people, one of the questions is, are you a heavy drinker? I don't want people who are drunk. We had some people come in the beginning who were really, really drunk, and we don't want to babysit. It's ruins the experience. Of course. So, so when someone says they're a heavy drinker, Pig King will text them and ask them questions about it and field them, talk them through, find out what do you mean by that? So we know, they know that it's not acceptable.
Yes, I can see that there are so many challenges, both that you're inviting people into your home and that it's an immersive event so that other people are very vulnerable to the other personalities in the room. Speaking of other personalities in the room, one of the things that really shocked me when I looked at the pictures of the event is that you have deer heads on the wall. Can you tell us why?
Yeah. I can understand why that would be shocking. I don't have deer heads on my wall normally. This is a house. It's in the woods. It's this Tudor lodge. It's kind of medieval looking in the great room. It's got really high cathedral ceiling, and in many of the rooms. And it looks like the perfect room to have deer heads. It's like a hunting lodge, but I never did that because I love animals. And for the show, I felt like I wanted to make a statement about that. So I sourced and I found deer heads that, got them for free, whatever. You can get them on Craigslist or people just, give them to you because people have them in their attic and they're not using them and whatever. So I have these deer heads, and then I put, because the Baroness had the tears on her stag head, that really spoke to me. And so I gave all of the animals these diamond tears. So they're crying and they're crying. And then around their necks, hanging around their necks is a little, sort of like a locket but large locket that and in the picture it shows how they were killed. So like there's this raccoon that was obviously trapped because you can see that the arm of it, the fur has been glued in a way you can tell, and like so it's holding like its picture of it trapped. And it's really interesting because not everybody notices these things. It's weird. Like they're up there and, you know, people will see that they have tears, but you have to look closer to see what it's about. So there's a statement there with that. So you like, at first you'll see it, but then if you look a little closer, you see what the reality is.
Really interesting. You know, another thing that it's occurring to me might come up since people don't know that the menu is vegan and what it's about and about your strong feelings about animals and their place in the world. There must, and since it's pretty pricey, I assume some people show up wearing fur. How do you deal with that?
Okay, yeah, they do. And, you know, in my other shows, I had a strict no fur policy. So I would, this is, I think, my fifth show, my fourth or fifth show. And I would just say that the hostess is an animal lover and please refrain from wearing fur. But with this one, we did it a little bit different. I don't say anything like that. But if someone comes wearing fur, I greet them at the door. I say, oh, what a beautiful fur. Please let me take that. Let's put that in that's very expensive. Let's put that in a special closet. Follow me. And then they follow me and I take them to a bedroom, and on a screen in the bedroom, there's a fur trapping, and it's a really repulsive video of ripping the fur off the animals, and it's awful. And then I say, please sit here for a minute while I get I forgot the key. Please sit here for a minute. I make them sit on the bed with that playing.
What kind of reactions do you get to that?
And then
Are people angry?
Come back, and it's really interesting. It's very, it's only one person a night gets this treatment, and some nights there's nobody with fur. But I've had different reactions. One person apologized profusely to me, like, "Oh my God, I shouldn't have worn fur. Oh, I'm so sorry." And then some people don't even notice it.
Wow.
Like they're just clueless. Like they don't even. I don't even know what they're looking at. Like they don't notice it. Like there's nothing going on in the room, or they just pretend like they don't notice it. I don't know. So I haven't had anybody get angry with me yet, but I'm sure it will happen.
That's extraordinary. People are extraordinary. They really are. You know, it sounds like the Illuminati Ball is just an experience that is hard to comprehend unless you've done it. And even then it might be hard to comprehend. But I do want to talk to a few other things that you do. And one of the things that we've heard is that you don't just throw extraordinary theatrical culinary events, but you rescue animals and rehab them. Can you tell us a little bit about that part of your life?
Sure. Yeah. I also write and illustrate children's books about animals. So yeah, and I've loved animals my whole life. They're really my passion. And for years I've just been rescuing. I had an unusual animal growing up. I had a pet skunk as a little girl.
Wow, that is unusual.
Yeah, my parents I had to learn my multiplication tables, and I wasn't learning them. I was really late in learning them, and they said, we'll get you a pet. And I thought they were going to get me a kitten or something, and then they come home with a descented skunk. And it was a little unusual, but it was, and a skunk really shouldn't be a pet. They're a wild animal. And it bit me, and it was not the most friendly pet, but it really taught me about unconditional love and about helping animals who aren't necessarily pet material. And I loved my skunk so much, and I would make it meals, and I really took care of it. It was like my baby. And so I've learned ever since then, I'm really, I love taking care of animals, especially ones that have had bad things happen to them. So I have a lot of animals that have special needs. And I've rescued many cats, feral cats, dogs. When I bought this house in the country, I saw so many animals on the road killed by cars, and they're injured. And that just every time I see one, I get really upset. And people just drive by them; they don't even care. But I cry every time. And so there was some baby raccoons on the side of the road, and I stopped my car. I have definitely put myself in danger to help animals many times, but there were these little raccoons on the road, and I pulled over and I took them, and my husband said, "Oh my God, they're going to bite you. What are they?" I'm like, "Don't worry about it. I'm not going to leave them there." So I picked them up, and they didn't bite me. They were fine. And I found someone to bring them to, and she had all of these rescues all over her house. She had a small little house, but she had all of these cages in her backyard. And I was like, who are you? What are you doing? I want to help you. So I volunteered to help this woman, and I helped her for a year. I would go there a couple days a week and just clean cages and help her. And I learned how to take care of wildlife and rehabilitate them and then release them into the wild. So then I took a test and I passed. So I'm a licensed wildlife rehabber. So,
That's
I
amazing.
rescue all kinds of animals. I don't do it full time. I just can't because I'm in New York so much. But a lot of people call me whenever someone finds something, an animal injured. I was in Times Square and we found a baby seagull on the street.
Wow,
like an injured baby seagull, and we caught it and I brought it to the Wild Bird Fund. And if an animal in need walks by my path, I will do anything I can. I will stop everything I'm doing.
Well, it sounds like you have the eye too. Some people just have the eye. They see animals when other people just don't see them.
Yeah.
And
and I think as an artist, you're aware of what's around you. I mean, you're seeing everything around you.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I have a little agoraphobia too. Maybe I'm a little autistic, and they say that people who are a little autistic have like more of a connection with like farm animals because farm animals are autistic. There's a whole Temple Grandin thing. I think there's a little truth to that. So I understand
like your
animals
approach
being
of helping.
afraid.
I like your approach of helping farm animals a lot better than Temple Grandins.
Yeah.
But you mentioned that part of this.
That's a whole other conversation, right?
Yeah, let's not get into that. But you mentioned, that you're an artist, and I think that's a really important subject for us to talk about before you leave. What do you believe the role of the arts is in changing the world for animals, and where do you see the artistic world and its relation to this extraordinarily important movement for social change?
Oh, that is such a good question, and I think about it every day. I am a really good artist, and I'm a really good painter, and I'm a good creator, and I make things happen. And I've been just racking my brain at like what I can do to help animals with my art. And I've done the children's books, try to educate children, and I'm going to do more of that. But that's where this came from. I thought, I'm good at doing these plays, but I wanted to incorporate my passion into this. So I'm trying to do what I can. I want to do more. One thing that I'm doing, I'm glad you mentioned this, is I decided by doing this that I want to start a real animal Illuminati. Because the whole idea of this is to empower the powerless. Like the whole reason why the animals in this show want to pretend to be the Illuminati is because they want to empower themselves. So, and there's so many people in the world who want power. The people who come to the show want more power. They want more money. But animals are the most, farm animals are the most powerless, really. They don't have a voice. So I feel like I want to start a real animal Illuminati where I get people who are doing things for animals to meet at this estate and actually really do it, where we really get together and try to brainstorm and try to figure out what we can do as artists or whatever you do. If you're a lawyer, if you're an artist, if you're a journalist, what can you do to help animals? I think it's really great what Nell is doing. Nell Alk, the woman who we hired for PR for the show, because she was a mainstream journalist and she reviewed one of my shows for the Wall Street Journal, and she decided she wanted to focus on doing journalism for animals or for veganism. And so that's what she's doing now. She's just changed her whole career, and she left the Wall Street Journal, and now she's really trying to focus on this. And I think that's really great. And that's a really good example of what, how you can take your skill and do something for animals and not, veganism is not only just it's for the whole planet, because really, I'm sure you know about Conspiracy, that film and how the gases that come from farm animals and all of that. I mean, it's a huge problem in so many different ways. So we really do need to focus on it. And I'm racking my brain. So, I think that starting an Illuminati where we can have a conversation and all get together, and I would love for you to be a part of it, and just come and we can have a whole weekend where we just get together and we do all of these kind of same things. We eat vegan meals and we have rituals and we think about it and we have drum circles and but then we have talks, deep talks to try to figure out what can I do as a human being to help this problem. because it's a serious problem.
It's like the most enormous, all-consuming, invisible problem that one could ever imagine. And I'm so excited that you're working through the arts, because I think that the arts have really lagged in some ways in catching up to this issue. I mean, of course, animals have always been part of the arts. They have been represented in the arts, but not for themselves. And, I think people really struggle with how to do that. So tell me why.
Well, it's hard.
Yeah.
As an artist, it's really hard. You're up against a lot of, people have really strong beliefs about eating meat and about, and they just don't want, if you are, I've written stories that were much more, about the subject, and, the publishers won't put them out because people have such a strong attachment to eating meat, and they don't want to hear about the bad things. They don't want to see it. They don't, if you paint, like Sue Coe does these great drawings of farm animals being killed, and it's people don't want to see it. And so it's really hard as an artist and to try to do that and try to get the word out there. So I'm trying to do it in a completely different way so I can break through that barrier.
Exactly. That's what the arts can do. They can reach people in different ways, and that's why I think what you're doing is so powerful.
Yeah, I mean, I wish it wasn't so small. I wish I could do it on a bigger way, but that's what I'm working on. So
well, it's very, very exciting. For those of our listeners who now are planning their trip to come to the Illuminati Ball, tell us how people can find out more about it.
Sure.
And how they can apply for tickets and just where it will be going in the future.
Okay, so yes, so if somebody wants to find out more information about the Illuminati Ball, they would just go to theilluminatiball.com. You can also go to immersiveexcursion.com, which is IMM, immersive, or theilluminatiball.com. And that's where you would find the application and information about the show and the FAQ and all of that. And then they would apply, and then upon acceptance, they could buy their tickets. Tickets are selling pretty quickly. So if you're interested, I wouldn't wait.
Oh, good for you.
Right now, tickets, they've been selling out. Our next show is sold out. And right now we're doing it through August. And it's hard to do this show in the winter. We did start it in the winter, but we really like being outside. So I don't know if it's going to continue after August. If it does, it might continue in a completely different way on a bigger scale in Manhattan. But it would be a different show. It probably wouldn't be a dinner. But it would, it's probably similar storyline. But I'm not sure about that yet. So right now, at this point, it's only going through August, and tickets are going pretty quickly. So go out and get your ticket if you're interested.
It's very exciting, and I just really admire what you're doing so much. It's different, and there aren't too many people who are like you just said. It's such a struggle to come up with a different way to find your way into people's hearts with the story of what's happening to animals, and it really sounds like that's what you're doing. So thank you so much, Cynthia, for joining me today at our hen house.
Thank you.
Well, that was Cynthia von Buhler, and this was the 331st episode of Our Hen House. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Jasmine Singer, and I'm so grateful to have you for yet another week. This was such a full, fun episode, and you could learn more about Our Hen House at ourhenhouse.org. As I said earlier, Our Hen House is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, so we rely on you and your contributions to help us to create quality programming week after week to change the world for animals. So I hope that you'll consider becoming a flock member, which you can do by visiting ourhenhouse.org and clicking on donate. And there's so many perks that come with becoming a flock member, in addition to knowing that you're helping to keep our content free for people who aren't able to contribute. You can also be the next person to get your hands on an ethically sourced, vegan-made Our Hen House tote bag. It is such a fancy, fabulous bag, and it touts our tagline, change the world for animals. And you'll also get invited to our flock-only Facebook page, which is a great page that has lots of fabulous dialogue going on all the time. You'll be in the first to be in the know. We'll ask you questions. We'll ask you for your feedback. There's contests. There's giveaways. There's lots of stuff, inside scoop from the coop, just for becoming a flock member, which you can do for a one-time donation of $150 or more, which will make you a flock member for a year. Or you could be a monthly recurring donor at $15 a month or more, which is what most people who are flock members tend to do. And I just want to thank you so much for those of you who already are flock members. And heads up, we're going to be soon asking you for creative ways to get other people to join the flock. So if you are a flock member, think about who you might want to help to get on board with our mission to change the world for animals. If you're not yet a flock member, please consider joining us. It is such a great way to support our efforts. Remember, we can't do this without your help. So find us at ourhenhouse.org. We have an online magazine there with thousands of articles. We have 3 podcasts, this one that you're listening to now. We have the Animal Law podcast with Marianne Sullivan. And we have the Teaching Jasmine How to Cook Vegan podcast, which is so exciting. And Chef Laura Delhauer is going to be our regular guest chef for that show. So I'm really excited that she's kind of like our chef in residence here at our hen house. So remember, you have to subscribe to all 3 of those podcasts separately on iTunes or Stitcher by going to iTunes or Stitcher and typing in the name of the podcast, either our hen house, which presumably you're already doing, or the Teaching Jasmine How to Cook Vegan podcast, or the Animal Law podcast. If you like what you're listening to, please consider leaving us a friendly review. It really helps to ramp up the eyeballs that see our programming and our shows, and then more and more people could learn about the incredible work being done by people such as today's guests and the many, many hundreds of other guests we've had as we are now in our 7th year. We also have an ebook publishing arm called Hen Press, so be sure to check that out. We have another publication coming soon through Hen Press, so if you are in the flock, you will get that for free. And we, of course, also publish Sanghamitra Iyer's book, The Lines We Draw. So check that out at ourhenhouse.org. Find us on Facebook, facebook.com/ourhenhouse. Find us on Twitter at ourhenhouse. Instagram, we are also at ourhenhouse. As I mentioned, I'm Jasmine Singer. My book recently came out this past February. It is a memoir, and it is called Always Too Much and Never Enough. I hope that you pick that up. You can learn more about me and my book at jasminesinger.com. There's no E on Jasmine. And if you like the book, I hope you'll also consider leaving a friendly review of that as well. You could find me at Facebook by just looking for Jasmine Singer. Again, no E on Jasmine. Or on Instagram, I'm Jasmine Singer Author. And on Twitter, I am at Jasmine_Singer. If you have any questions for us, or if there's anything you want us to address on the show, then you could email us at info@ourhenhouse.org. Or you could go to the contact page over at ourhenhouse.org if you would prefer to do that. And remember, you could also dedicate a podcast episode that will also make you a member of the flock. So that's $200. If there's someone in your life who has a birthday coming up, or you want to celebrate, or maybe yourself, or anything else, just go to ourhenhouse.org and click on donate, or email us at info@ourhenhouse.org. I think that's about it. I'm really grateful to you for joining us, and I look forward to talking to you next week.